Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Shuffle Music Reviews and Retrospectives from a gracelessly aging millennial. My name's Keaton, back with our top 5 albums of the year, starting from the year I was born, 1986, going through every year of my life. We are now on 1989. This was a tough year. It was an interesting year. Not only did you have a lot going on in the rock world, but you also had in 1989 a few really big names in the sort of singer songwriter world who had basically taken the 80s off in terms of making good music. It's not like they weren't busy, but they were not busy doing anything worth listening to. All of a sudden, sort of come back and put out some really worthwhile stuff. And so that made the list a little bit difficult. We'll see which ones of those household names in the singer songwriter world made the top 5. But we will jump right in. The 5 slot was the hardest slot to determine. It was very, very close between the one I chose and the one I didn't choose. And I'll get into what went into that decision a little bit later when we do our runners up. But my number 5 is, at risk of some of you laughing at me, but I don't care. I love this album. It's the B-52's Cosmic Thing. And part of what made me decide to put this on the list is the story behind it. In 1985, the B-52s lost their guitarist, Ricky Wilson, to AIDS. And this was especially devastating given that his sister, Cindy, was in the band. He had confided in Keith Strickland, the drummer, that he was sick. And it really hit the band hard to the point where they were pretty much done after that. Their album previous to this one was not a huge success, and this was just an obviously crushing blow. And so it looked like that was going to be it for the B-52s. But in 1988, they sort of reconvened in Woodstock, New York, upstate from the city where they were living at the time. And they started writing songs again as part of like a support group to help grieve. And ironically, what emerged from those sessions is one of the happiest, silliest, catchiest, dance-friendly, most upbeat sort of pop rock albums of its time. The crown jewel of the album, of course, being Love Shack, which was the massive hit of the album. And I've always thought Love Shack is brilliant. It's kind of a genius song. It's one of those just inspired pieces of art. And the reason I say that is because not only is it super catchy and super fun, but if you think about it, there really is no song quite like Love Shack. It doesn't remind you of any other song. There's no other song that reminds you of it. It's very original. It's so much its own thing. And so it's one of the best songs of the 80s, in my view. But that's not the only good song on the album by any means. I mean, it's not like this album only exists for that song. Other singles include Channel Z, Cosmic Thing, the title track, the opener, which is really good. Deadbeat Club, I think, is a great single. And then you have 2 songs on here, Rome, which was a big single, and Brushfire. Rome and Brushfire back to back on this album. Both feature really great vocals from the 2 female vocalists in the band, Kate Pearson and Cindy Wilson. Now, what also made this album really kind of amazing is that after Ricky Wilson's passing, the drummer, Keith Strickland, had to switch to guitar. And that was especially difficult because he had to learn all of these really bizarre guitar tunings that Ricky Wilson had sort of become famous for. Not just like a drop D tuning or a dadgad tuning, but he had these really, really strange tunings where he would mute a couple of strings and he would tune. In one guitar tuning, he had 3 strings tuned to the exact same note, 3 strings tuned to the F note on the scale. And so to actually learn those tunings so that you could play the songs live with that B-52 sound and write new songs that sound like B-52 songs, that was a major undertaking. And then they used 4 different studio drummers on this album. It's kind of a great story, not a great story, I should say, but a moving story behind this album. And given that it's born of such tragedy and it's so happy and so good and so fun, I thought it was worth putting on this list. So number 5 is Cosmic Thing, pardon me, by the B-52s. All right, number 4 is the Stone Roses self-titled album. The Stone Roses are a band failed by the world. They released this album in 1989. It was not an immediate hit. They would only put out one more album in 1994 before they disbanded a couple of years later. They would reunite for some shows in the 2010s. They would release a couple singles in 2016, only to disband again. Band that just undeservedly never really caught on, even though this is widely considered one of the best albums of its day. Because to listen to this now, you'd think A British Invasion 2.0 was just around the corner. It's that good. Super catchy, melodic, groovy tunes from front to back. She Bangs the Drums, Waterfall. Waterfall is such a great song. The guitar riff in that is so cool. It's almost like this African kind of world beat guitar part. Song from My Sugar Spun Sister, Made of Stone, I Am the Resurrection. That's a great, great song. The song itself is great. It kind of ends at the 3-minute and 40-second mark, and then there's this great extended groovy bass and guitar jam that just goes on forever. It rocks. It's awesome. The US version of this release has Elephant Stone and Fool's Gold on it, which definitely add to the album. But even without those songs, it's just a delightful, beautiful pop rock record. One for the ages by a band that should have had a lot more to offer. But unfortunately, they just, for some reason, never caught on and can keep it together. But the Stone Roses self-titled album is a near masterpiece. I think it's absolutely outstanding, and that is number 4. All right, number 3 is one of those singer-songwriters that I talked about who made a great record in 1989 after stinking it up for most of the decade, and I'm talking about Neil Young. The album is called Freedom. Neil Young's 80s output was so bad that his label, Geffen Records, actually moved to sue him for making music that was unmarketable and uncharacteristic of his prior work. They eventually settled things. They apologized to him. He defended his choices as, artistic freedom. But his 80s discography is really bizarre. Really bizarre. Especially Everybody's Rockin', which was his rockabilly album, that you literally can't tell if it's a joke or not. That's how bad it is. Trans, which was the 1982 album, was pretty bad as well. Reactor, that was the one he did with Crazy Horse, and I think either 80 or 81. That was decent. That was not bad. But starting from Trans through Everybody's Rockin', then you had some other just really bizarrely bad albums like Landing on Water, Life, and then This Note's for You. There was a country album thrown in there called Old Ways, which was pretty good. I thought that was a decent country album because I like the acoustic sort of Americana Neil Young stuff. So I didn't think Old Ways was bad, but other than that, his 80s output was just bizarrely bad. And that's what's kind of miraculous about Freedom, because on this album, he sort of puts together songs that he had written and tapes that he had made from the past decade or so, dating back to the 70s, many of which sound very different from each other. It's not really cohesive in that way. You have kind of 3 different styles here. You have the plugged in, sort of loose, kind of muddy, rough around the edges electric stuff, like Keep on Rockin' in the Free World, which we get an acoustic live version at the beginning, and then the official like studio rockin' plugged in version at the end. You get a sort of south of the border version of that electric sound with El Dorado. You also get a cover of On Broadway, which I gotta say, Neil Young is one of my favorite artists, and On Broadway is one of my favorite songs. But if ever an artist and a cover don't mix, it would be On Broadway, since On Broadway is just a very sort of catchy, very precise sort of poppy tune. And Neil Young's electric stuff is, like I said, it's rough around the edges. It's grimy, it's grungy, it's muddy. He's sometimes referred to as the godfather of grunge for that reason. So it's possible that that song doesn't work, but he's one of my favorite artists covering one of my favorite songs, It works for me. Don't Cry, that's another plugged in tune that's pretty good. You also have the acoustic side of Neil Young here, which is excellent. And the irony of Neil Young is that his acoustic stuff is very delicate and very wistful and very precise, and the electric stuff is the complete opposite of that. But the sort of smaller, more acoustic tunes on this are beautiful. Hanging on a Limb, The Ways of Love, Too Far Gone. You also get Crime in the City, which is an acoustic song. It's like an 8.5 minute epic, sort of a combination of All Along the Watchtower, the Bob Dylan version. In fact, he even says, I can't get no relief at one point in the song, and that really makes you think of All Along the Watchtower since the chords and stuff are very similar. Hurricane, which is another Bob Dylan tune, and Talking Heads' Life During Wartime. It reminds you, it's like those three songs melded into one for 8.5 minutes. So that's a really good one. And then finally, you have the sort of glossier, more 80s sounding stuff on Someday, Wrecking Ball, and No More. So you have a real hodgepodge of different styles, given that these were songs that were written over the course of about 12 years. But one thing they have in common is that they're all really good. They're all really good. Like, there are no skips on this album, which is kind of amazing because you think some of these good songs would have made it onto some of those prior records, which were really not very good at all. But for some reason, he had, this great bunch of songs lying around after a decade of making pretty lousy albums. And they all come together for this one. It was a real comeback for him, and deservedly so. He then went on a run in the 90s, which I think is actually quite good. But it all started here, where his career sort of kickstarted after that 80s slump. So Freedom is really, really good. Rockin' in the Free World, obviously a great song. That's sort of a sister song to Born in the USA, I always thought of. A protest song sort of disguised as a, jingoistic, patriotic song. So Freedom is really, really good. I love it. I think you should definitely check it out. All right, now we're going into the nitty gritty, into the top two. Now, both of these two are fantastic, and this is one, my number two pick, that I revisited after a long time of not having listened to it. I love this album when I first heard it, but I hadn't listened to it much at all for like the past 20 years. But I'm talking about the Nine Inch Nails debut, Pretty Hate Machine. This is essentially a creation of then, 23 going on 24-year-old Trent Reznor, who just came out of nowhere with this absolute firecracker of an album. He makes just about all the sounds on the album. And by makes, I mean samples from existing music. There's no band here. There's Reznor, his producers, a drum machine, and a Macintosh Plus, the old Macintosh Pluses. Google that and you'll find an image of that, and you'll see how cool it is that he made this album on that computer, where he did the sequencing and the editing and the songs, which he sampled from artists like Jane's Addiction, Public Enemy, and Prince. The songs here are terrific. Head Like a Hole, Terrible Lie, Sin, Down in It. The thing that's great about this album is not only does it sound great, but the songwriting is really good and accessible. As confrontational as the album is, as aggressive as it is, as different as it is, you can really latch on to the songwriting. And that's something I forgot about this one, because between 1989 and now, I mean, Nine Inch Nails, Trent Reznor, they've had such a career of twists and turns, different styles. He's done sort of the more ambient, atmospheric, instrumental music on his Ghosts series. He's also gotten into film scoring with Atticus Ross. The Nine Inch Nails, he's done sort of more band sounding stuff, starting with the Downward Spiral in 94, going through like the Fragile era in 99. And then he's put out a decent amount of stuff in the 21st century as well, that have sort of borrowed from the different styles that he explored both on Pretty Hate Machine and in the 90s. But one thing he hasn't done much of lately is just like traditional songwriting like this. And so, as outside the box as this is, this sort of like industrial rock sound, there's really good songwriting here, and there's really good vocals here. Really good vocals here on all the songs I just mentioned: Head Like a Hole, Terrible Lie, Sin, Down in It. Those are great, great tunes. And then the one thing that really stands out here, and this is a song I kind of forgot about, is Something I Can Never Have. It's a great sort of brooding piano, slow, eerie song. It's a song kind of like Hurt. Hurt is the song off the Downward Spiral that was immortalized by Johnny Cash when he covered it. We sort of think of that as the sort of quintessential Nine Inch Nails sort of dark lullaby. But Something I Can Never Have is really just as good a song, if not stronger. And, given, like I said, all the different kinds of stuff that Nine Inch Nails put out over the past now 37 years, if you can believe that, I kind of forgot just how good the songwriting was here and how much these songs just work as songs, irrespective of the shock value of it all. So definitely recommend Pretty Hate Machine. It's something that I liked a lot when I first got into Nine Inch Nails, which was, back in 2003 to 2004 or 5, whenever the With Teeth album came out. That was 2005. I liked that one a lot, and then I started exploring the rest of their stuff, and I found this, but I hadn't listened to it much since because Nine Inch Nails is not for everybody. You definitely have to be in the mood for it. It's not the kind of thing you just reach for and throw on willy-nilly. But my number one album is, and that is what set this number one album apart from Pretty Hate Machine, which I also think is outstanding. My number one album of 1989 is the most indelible and unshakable album of 1989, and that is Disintegration by The Cure. It's lush, it's evocative, it's cinematic, it's moody to the point where you feel like after listening to it the way you feel after watching a great movie. It's that immersive an experience. Sonically, The Cure really experimented a lot in its earlier albums, which they put a lot of out. This was their 8th album in just 10 years. And it all kind of culminated in fusing the sort of synths with the guitars in such a beautiful way on this album. The electric guitars kind of weave in and out of this wall of synth sounds. It's like in 1989, a band finally figured out how to make that synth really work and really shine and really sing with really dark but catchy bass grooves underneath the songs, and then the moaning vocals from Robert Smith laid over the top. The first half of the album is great. You have Plain Song, which is a great opener to really set the mood for this. Then you have your more sort of like commercial friendly songs like Lullaby and Love Song, but also the gorgeous Pictures of You, which runs 7+ minutes. Fascination Street is also really terrific. I love the mix on that. I love the pulsing bass on that with the sort of upper register synth and the guitar kind of just wailing over it. Just like an addictive song. It's a song you never want to end, and you want to start it over as soon as it ends. But where the album really shines, though, in my opinion, is toward the end. Like the last 4 songs here, which are The Same Deep Water as You, Disintegration, the title track, Homesick, and then Untitled. They all feel like one big composition. It's almost like a big suite broken up into 4 tracks, and it just sweeps you off your feet. We even get some piano and violin towards the end. It's just a beautiful album, and it's a transcendent listening experience. It's like a Darren Aronofsky movie, this album. Just like unapologetically tragic. It's intimate, yet expansive and grandiose and epic at the same time. It's over 70 minutes long, but you really want to start it over as soon as it ends. This is one of those albums that you can get hooked on and just like not want to listen to anything else for a few weeks. I'm a big Steely Dan fan, and so every once in a while I'll go on a Steely Dan kick, or just like every other band, I'm like, it's inferior. Why would I waste my time listening to that? It doesn't measure up to the Dan stuff. Well, I feel that way about this album. There are weeks at a time where I'm like, what's the point of putting anything else on except this one? Because it just leaves that kind of mark on you. It's outstanding. They finally made everything they do work really well. I'm not a huge fan of The Cure as a band. I will probably do a Cure album ranking soon because, throughout the mid and late 80s, I ended up, revisiting a few of their different albums when considering them for these lists. And it's not that this is their only good album. I think they've put out a few other really good albums. But when you listen to the early Cure stuff, they really are kind of figuring out their sound. Okay, the first one is sort of post punk, and then they add the keys on the second album, and then they take them away for the third album, but they get more into the goth mood, and then it's more of a rock mood meets the goth mood on an album like Pornography, and they just kind of keep tweaking the dials until they get it so miraculously right with this one. And so Disintegration is a damn near masterpiece. It's the best album of 1989. Now we're going to get into some runners-up. Now, my first runner-up is not the one that I was really considering for the sixth slot. The first runner-up is a runner-up with an asterisk because you could call this a runner-up. You can call this an honorable mention. You might even call this a dishonorable mention. And I'm talking about New York by Lou Reed. Now, for those who know me, I'm a New Yorker. I'm kind of a cynical bastard. You think, well, Keaton, how could you not have Lou Reed on this list? How can you not have this album on this list? Because it's a terrific album. This is a damn near masterpiece album. In fact, this might even be my number one album of 1989 if it's not for one thing, which I'll get to in a minute. There's great songs on here. Amazing songs. It's basically a concept album detailing different vignettes from seedy 80s New York. Romeo Had Juliet, The Halloween Parade, which is a great song where he observes how these fixtures of the Halloween parade in the village are not there anymore, with the implication being that they died of AIDS, which was ravaging New York at the time that this album came out. Just a really eerie, tragic, amazing song. Dirty Boulevard, one of my favorite songs of the decade, an amazing song. The Last Great American Whale, amazing allegory about environmental devastation, the Holocaust of the American Indian, the beginning of a great adventure, another great song, There Is No Time, another like political anthem. This album is ruined, though, by one song called Good Evening, Mr. Waldheim. Now, it's about, on the surface, Kurt Waldheim, who was the former Nazi and at that time the president of Austria. And so he takes his shots at him, which of course is fine. No one's going to object to that. But he dedicates an entire verse of that song to browbeating Jesse Jackson, who was running for president at the time, for essentially betraying Jews by not supporting Israel. He goes after Jesse Jackson in that song about, statements he made about the PLO and Farrakhan. And basically, at the time, Jesse Jackson had made those Hymietown comments, which were in the news, which if that were everything he was talking about, I could maybe let it go. But that's not everything he was talking about. For an album that focuses so much on like cynical political rantings that are, for the most part, very base, for the most part, are like very like pro-working class and very observant. I mean, he refers to the Statue of Liberty multiple times in this album as the statue of bigotry. But then in this song, you're going to browbeat a civil rights leader for essentially not supporting Israel. And he implies very strongly in a lyric that Jesse Jackson basically owed it to the Jewish people to support Israel because so many Jewish people supported black people in their struggle for civil rights. If you remember, we covered on the other show, Juliana Margulies. She made a similar point. How could they not support Israel after all we'd done for them? It's just completely arrogant and shitty to the point where it ruins the whole album. Like, it tarnishes the other songs because so much of this album is social commentary. And what good social commentary there is really undone by that song to the point where it kind of ruins the whole thing. It ruins the whole thing. That's not to say I'll never give a Lou Reed album a good review, or obviously, I mean, the Velvet Underground were fantastic. Like, I'm capable of separating the art from the artist, but when the artist injects their really shitty, mean spirited garbage opinions into their art, it makes it impossible to separate out the two. So you can call this a runner up. You can call this a dishonorable mention. What we're really saying is that this is disqualified. And it's a shame because this is one of the best albums of 1989. But I just can't recommend it. I can't recommend it in that way because if I did, people would say, "Well, you know that one song with that lyric." What am I going to say? Yeah, well, but besides that, it's good. No, besides that, it's not good. It's not good. That verse in that song to me just tarnishes the whole thing because it takes so much of the credibility out of the rest of what he's saying, right? Don't rant about the statue of bigotry while at the same time, chastising a civil rights leader for not supporting Israel and suggesting that he's being disloyal to Jews by not supporting Israel. That's a garbage opinion, and it ruins what is essentially a masterpiece album. So that's a shame, but that's why that's not on there. It's really the reason I've spent time talking about that is because I know it's a really good album, and many of you are probably going to think, well, why wasn't that on the list? Well, that's why. Now you know. All right, so now we're going to get into the actual runners-up. So this is the actual number 6 on the list. Very close between this and Cosmic Thing by the B-52s. And this is another comeback album from a legendary songwriter, Oh Mercy by Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan was introduced to producer Daniel Lanois through Bono. He recorded Love Rescue Me with Bono for U2's Rattle and Hum album. At the time, U2 had just been working a lot with producer Daniel Lanois on the Joshua Tree and the Unforgettable Fire. And so Bob Dylan was put in touch with Lanois through Bono, and Daniel Lanois put together a bunch of New Orleans session players to play a backing band on this album, Oh Mercy, which just happened to be Dylan's strongest set of songs in years. Dylan's 80s output, I don't think was as bad as a lot of people think it is. He did have a couple of real clunkers, especially Knocked Out Loaded, which was his 86 album, which I just thought was dreadful. He made some stuff that was, okay. I mean, I thought Empire Burlesque was like decent. Shot of Love is decent. Infidels is better than decent. Infidels is probably like a 3, maybe even a 3.5 star album. So his 80s stuff wasn't as bad as Neil Young's 80s stuff, for sure. But this was definitely a return to form. Not only was this lyrically the strongest batch of songs he had written in a while, but it sounds fantastic. Daniel Lanois, just a tremendous producer, who really just, like I said, he produced So by Peter Gabriel. In that review on my 86 list, I talk about the bed of sound. It's just such a depth to the music, such a depth to the sound. There's that it feels like a New Orleans band is just like drenched guitar sounds and just very ethereal, evocative music. And the songwriting is really good. The songwriting is really good here. You have Political World, Everything is Broken, Most of the Time, Man in the Long Black Coat, Shooting Star. Then you have these great piano tunes. The piano sounds terrific on this album as well. Ring Them Bells, Disease of Conceit. Just a really, really consistent set of songs. There's not really any skips on this album. The songs are also concise. None of them wear out their welcome. None of them go on and on and on for 7, 8, 9 minutes, the way some Dylan tunes can be a little self-indulgent in that way. Kind of keeps things concise here. The one thing this album is missing, though, is a marquee showstopper song. The way all of the Dylan masterpieces have at least one. Obviously, if you go back to the 60s and 70s, I mean, a lot of those albums have 4, 5, 6 masterpiece songs on them. But even in his later year outputs, Time Out of Mind, which would be the next album that he would do with Daniel Lanois later in the 90s, that really has 2 showstopper songs on there, Make You Feel My Love and Not Dark Yet. Love and Theft had Mississippi, which in my opinion is one of the top 10 Dylan songs ever. So this doesn't have that. It doesn't have a 5-star song. It doesn't have a killer song. And that is why I gave the edge to the B-52s Cosmic Thing, because the B-52s has that knockout song. It has Love Shack. And also, if I'm being honest, Bob Dylan will be on at least 3 more lists between now and the end of this series. And then when we go back and do the 60s and the 70s, he'll be on God knows how many more lists. Those early albums are going to be ranked, just about every single one of them in some fashion. So this just misses the top 5, but not by much. Really, really strong, really good. Definitely recommend that you check it out. Another runner-up is going to be Full Moon Fever by Tom Petty. Little bit of subjectivity here. I was 3 going on 4 when this album came out. My mom used to blast this album. Free Fallin', which is track 1 off of this album, was really the first song I remember liking. That was the first time I was like, oh, that's a good song. This is what it means to like a song. First song I ever really got to know and memorize the words and recognize how cool the melody was and just how pretty a song it was. So this was really my first foray into the world of pop music, was this album. Track 1, Free Fallin', and then obviously you have Won't Back Down, Running Down a Dream. This was produced by Jeff Lynne from ELO, who co-wrote a lot of the songs with him. So just really, really good, catchy tunes here. This kicked off what is a pretty damn good 3-album run. One of perhaps the more underrated 3-album runs in rock history. Full Moon Fever, Into the Great Wide Open, and then Tom Petty's sort of a little change of pace, but 1994's Wildflowers was excellent as well. So Full Moon Fever, definitely worth a spot as a runner-up. And then my final runner-up, The Real Thing by Faith No More. After firing their original vocalist, Chuck Mosley, Faith No More really kind of restarted their career with their new singer, Mike Patton, who's just a powerhouse. And so this was the first album that he sang with them on, which means this is really kind of a debut album of sorts in that way, since this is really like the beginning of what we know Faith No More to be right now. Once again, the album is called The Real Thing. It's super punchy, precise, hard-hitting, well-executed tunes, great playing, great vocals, just a super solid rock album from beginning to end. Kind of a heavier version of Red Hot Chili Peppers with a little Rush influence thrown in there. Some people credit or blame this album, depending on how you look at it, for the rise of the rap metal genre, since, like I said, Red Hot Chili Peppers kind of has that kind of vocal delivery style. By rap metal, we're talking about some bands that really elicit negative emotions in people, like, Korn and Limp Bizkit. You may even throw Linkin Park in there to a certain degree. I don't hold that against them, because this album just sounds really terrific. The songwriting is really good. I think the playing is fantastic. I think the mix is great. I especially love the first 3 tunes off here. From Out of Nowhere is just a really rollicking opener. I love it. Epic is the single off here, the big single off here. I like that song as well. My favorite song off of this album, though, is track 3, Falling to Pieces. I think Falling to Pieces is just an awesome song. I love the chorus of that song. I love the way the melody is constructed. It's very simple, but very clever. Kind of plays with your expectations. Just when you think he's going to go into the upper octave, Patton slips into the lower octave, and that juxtaposed with the sort of standard sort of rock guitar to bang, bang, bang. That song just so works. I love that song so much. And speaking of sort of messing with the octave registers, Mike Patton famously has a 6-octave vocal range. He's one of the most versatile singers out there. Such a unique singer. And this is really a unique band, and you really see them come into their own on The Real Thing. It's the real thing. Ha ha. Well, I hope this list was the real thing for you. We're going to just recap things real quick. Number 5, Cosmic Thing by the B-52s. Number 4 is the Stone Roses' self-titled album, The Stone Roses. Number 3 is Neil Young's Freedom. Number 2 is Pretty Hate Machine by the Nine Inch Nails. And the number 1 album of 1989, Disintegration by The Cure. Hope you all enjoyed this. Thank you very much for watching. Smash that subscribe button on the way out. Post in the comments below what you think I got right, what you think I got wrong, and what your top 5 list is for 1989. And we'll see you next time for the 1990 countdown. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.